Social studies investigates the dynamic and ever-changing connections of culture while providing a foundation for learning about history through time, continuity, and change.
Time continuity and change is a theme that draws heavily on the discipline of history, but also relates to other disciplines. I see the classroom as just a cultural, diverse bowl of soup. All my students come in with different viewpoints. That's important because of our history. And whenever you teach history, that's what makes it exciting for me, because the children find that more exciting.
Boys and girls, I want to start out today by thinking about the lesson that we started on Friday.
By identifying similarities and differences of modern-day farming practices to farming 200 years ago, David Kitts introduces his first grade class to time continuity and change.
Did anyone think of something? Nigel?
We read a book.
In the Santo Domingo Elementary School, located on a reservation in New Mexico, 90% of the students speak the traditional Native American language of Keres, with English as their second language.
We read Heartland. Now I want you to think about what Heartland was about.
It was about farm.
Was it nowadays farming or long, long ago farming, Calvert?
Now farm.
It was now farming. We're going to read a book later about long ago farming. Can you all look up here at the board, way over here? Who remembers what this word was in the red circle? Javen, what was that word?
Modern.
Who remembers what modern means?
New.
It means new, right now.
Time is an important element in teaching history. History is not an easy subject for them. To them, today is important, but yesterday is almost as long to them as 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 100 years ago.
When you came to school today, we talked about the trading post burning down yesterday, didn't we?
Yeah.
That was a real sad thing. But did you know that trading post was built in 1880? That's why I put it up here. It's been around for 120 years. This lesson covered 200 years, which I tried to explain to them by talking about events not in their lives, but that they could relate to: births of parents, grandparents, the burning down of the trading post last night, which is a familiar building, at least, to them. I want you to look at what I wrote here. 200 years ago, your grade...
David Kitts' lesson is a good example of using the concept of time continuity and change to show that not only do things change over time, as he compares farming in the past and in the present, but there's also continuity. Some things don't change. And so it's important for the students to have a way of thinking about the past and the present.
Did you see anything in Oxcart Man that you might also see in Heartland? Avery, did you think of something that was in here that could be in modern times too?
I saw fields.
You saw fields.
In the early grades, reading is one of the first subjects that children must learn. Many reading materials for youngsters are enriched with social studies content.
There's an enormous wealth of social studies materials for students to learn to read with and to read to learn about. Also, in terms of the other kinds of literacy skills, listening, speaking, working in groups, communicating information back and forth. Social studies content is a natural vehicle for all these kinds of skills being developed.
We studied first people.
In Winthrop, Massachusetts, Rob Cuddy's fifth graders put on their explorer's hats and take a step back in time. Time continuity and change is demonstrated by examining how the roots of democracy were created through the integration of the settlers and First People.
We had just finished studying a period of First People, and we have a tendency to teach in units. And the children have a tendency to learn in units. So they would immediately leave the First People behind and then move on with the explorers, not making the timeline connection. So I try to spend a lot of time connecting back to First People as I work through each of the units and then carry the explorers along and then the settlers along. But I always tie everything to the national standards and the essential questions.
The First People were here a long time. They had ownership of this area of land, this part of the world. And it was the explorers that were kind of the intruders. So they came, the First People were already here. So this is what we think we know. Some of the facts are good, some of the facts maybe not so perfect. Now you went out to do your research.
Written history is always a statement recording, if you will, of an individual's perspective on what happened. And it's valuable for, I think, for students to have that concept so that they don't believe that that is the only version of history. It's useful for them to have exposure to several versions of a same event so that they can make some judgments and then learn from it.
What kind of a government did Spain have? Yes.
Spain's government was a monarchy.
What's a monarchy? Can anybody tell me? Ben, can you tell me what a monarchy is?
A monarchy is usually made up of a king or queen. Sometimes it can consist also of a prince and princess. And usually the oldest sibling would be the inheritance to the throne.
All right.
And whatever the king and queen said went.
You have monarchy coming over here. We are a democratic society. Where did that all come from? Sam?
The first people.
It came from the first people. Excellent. What in the first people's government is similar to democracy today?
The first people had clans, councils. Clans and councils would relate to the House of Representatives.
Very good. All right. So now here we have democracy. We have a monarchy coming over. All right. So I think you're going to see how this is all going to interplay as we move down through American history. Because, again, this is a continuum.
Something I've learned about the explorers that relates to my life today is John Cabot, he tried to find a shorter way than what Columbus tried to do around the world to Asia. Just like us, we try to find better solutions or shorter solutions to problems today.